Hello, today we are starting chapter 4. We are now moving on to multiplying, so multiplication patterns with decimals. And our goal today is to be able to use patterns to help us place the decimal point in a product when we are multiplying. Ms. Farron is combining equal-sized rectangles from different fabric patterns to make a postage stamp quilt. Each rectangle has an area of 75 hundredths of a square inch, so pretty small squares. She will be using 1,000 squares to make the quilt. What will the area of the quilt be? To do that, we're going to multiply. We are going to find patterns to do that. So first, let's think what our multiplication equation actually is going to be. It is going to be 75 hundredths of an inch times 1,000, because that's how many squares I'll have. We're going to use patterns to do that. So we're going to start right here with 1 times 75 hundredths to start our pattern. And that, of course, is 75 hundredths. Next, we're going to increase right here by a power of 10. So we're going from 1 to 10, increasing with that power of 10. When we do that, our decimal point is going to move. So I'm going to show this little decimal bump. That's what I call them. That's multiplied by 10. So 10 times 75 hundredths is 7 5/10. When I'm multiplying by another power of 10, this time I'm going to move my decimal place over twice. So watch my little decimal bumps. 1, 2. So now I have 75. When I come down here and multiply by my last power of 10, my 1,000, that is going to be moving my decimal point 3 places. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now, as I'm writing that, it can't be 75 because 100 times 75 hundredths was 75. I've got this little space right here where I need to fill in a place with a 0 to make that be 750. So this is my ultimate multiplication sentence, right? My final one, 1,000 times 75 hundredths. So the quilt will have an area of 750 square inches. As we're multiplying by increasing powers of 10, how does the position of the decimal point change in the product? Every time I increase that power of 10, my decimal point moves 1 to the right. So that's what I'm going to write in here. The decimal point moves 1 place to the right. Okay, just a couple things to point out. With this, notice that my first power of 10, I moved over 1 place. 2 powers of 10, I moved over 2 places. 3 powers of 10, I moved over 3 places. You can look at kind of like a shortcut and see, okay, well, 2 zeros, so I moved my decimal point over twice. 3 zeros, move it 3 times. 1 0, move it over once. For work on these problems, I do want to see these little decimal bumps, is what I call them, those decimal movements. Just until we get into to being a little bit more practiced with this, I want to see those as part of your work, even after we're practiced. It's not a bad thing to show that for your work. Okay, let's move on to our next problem. Sam is making a scale model of the Willis Tower in Chicago for a theater set. The height of one tower is 1,353 feet, like the actual tower. 1,353 feet. If the model is 1/100th of the actual size of the building, how tall is the model? So our multiplication sentence, our equation, would look like this. 1/100th, I'm going to write that as a decimal, like that. 1/100th times 1,353 is my actual multiplication sentence for that. We're going to use patterns to find the product again. So I'm going to start with 1 times 1,353, and that, of course, is 1,353. The reason why we start with 1 is that it just gives us our number here. It's just a good place to start. From here, we can increase powers of 10 or decrease. Decreasing is what we're going to do this time. So we went from 1. Now we're going to multiply by 1/10. times 1,353. My decimal is not actually written here, right? But we know it's there. My decimal, if I were to write it, would be right here. So I'm going to move that over one place. So I have 135.3. On my next one, 100th, I'm going to be moving my decimal over two places. 1, 2. Again, notice I'm going ahead and putting in those decimal bumps. I get 13 and 53 hundredths. And then that's what I'm getting at here is 100th times 1,353. So the model of the tower is going to be 13 and 53 hundredths feet tall. As we are multiplying by decreasing powers of 10, so we're getting into the decimals, how does that position of the decimal point change in the product? This time, with those decreasing, it's moving left. So I'm just going to write in here the decimal point moves one place to the left. Okay, notice a similar type of pattern, 1/10. I've got one digit in the decimals, so I bump it over 1. 100th, I've got two digits in the decimals, so I'm going to bump it over twice. Similar pattern to when we're multiplying by tens and hundreds and thousands. This time I'm going the opposite direction. Okay, let's look at one more scenario. 3 friends are selling items at an arts and crafts fair. Josie makes $45.75 selling jewelry. Mark makes 100 times as much as Josie by selling his custom furniture. And Chris makes 1/10 of the money that Mark makes by selling paintings. How much did each friend make? So Josie is kind of like our base amount. We need to use her $45.75 to figure out the rest. So we know how much Josie made. Mark, it says, looking back at the problem, Mark makes 100 times as much. So I'm going to do 45.75 times 100. Okay, I'm going to use the pattern to do this. So 45.75 times 1 is 45.75 times 10. Going to be moving my decimal point over to the right, one place. Now, because I'm dealing with money, I can't just leave it like that. Because we're dealing with money we know has to have two places in the decimals. We have to go to the hundredths. So I'm going to put a 0 there. On my last problem with 100, my decimal is going to go here, 45.75, and I am going to put a decimal in 00 because it's money. So I need to make sure that I have those decimals in place. So that means that Mark made a lot of money, $4,575. Okay, now we're on to Chris. It says Chris made 1/10 of the money that Mark makes. So Mark had the 4,575, and it's times 1/10 because it says he made, right here, right? He made 1/10 of that. So it would look like that. Okay, I'm using that pattern again. Okay, 4,575. I could put decimals on that if I wanted to. When I'm moving over to the 10th, 1/10 times 4,575, my decimal point is going right here. 457.5 I need a 0. So Chris, right here, made $457.50. Mark had $4,575. Josie had the $45.75. Okay, let's look at just some patterns here without any situation, just the patterns themselves. 38 times 1, of course, is 38. 38 times 1/10, that means that I'm moving 1 to the left, so that becomes 3 8/10. And then 38 times 100th, I'm moving twice. So my decimal is going to pop out front. Remember, it's a good idea to be in the habit of putting this 0 right here. Just calls a little bit more attention to the fact that we have a decimal here. Okay, now on this next one with the patterns, we're coming back and hitting exponents a little bit here. So just to remember and recall, 10 to the 0 power, that remember is the same as 1. 10 to the first power is 10. 10 to the second power is 100. 10 to the third power is 1,000. We talked about a lot of little shortcuts and ways to remember that easily. My favorite way is to look at my exponent, which is the little small number up to the top. And that tells you how many zeros you should have when we're dealing with tens. So 10 to the first power should have 1 0. 10 to the second power has 2. 10 to the third power, 3 zeros. 10 to the 0 power, of course, has 0 zeros, so it's just 1. Okay, and then we should be able to get our multiplying in once we've got those figured out. So 10 to the 0 power times 4 and 78 hundredths is just that 4 and 78 hundredths. 10 to the first power times 4 and 78 hundredths. That's going to move my decimal over one place, so 47 and 8 tenths. 10 to the second power, that's going to move my decimal over twice, 478. 10 to the third power is going to move my decimal over 3 places. Don't forget to put a 0 there, though, to hold the space, to hold the place for that. So that becomes 4,780. Another little shortcut, maybe you notice this, 10 to the first power, I moved my decimal over one place. 10 to the second, moved it over twice. 10 to the third, I moved it over 3 times. So that can be another way to look at these in the patterns also. Okay, it is time for you to practice this. Remember on work and showing work, I do want to see your decimal bumps on these. I want to see which way that you're moving your decimals. So please include that as part of your work on this. Go ahead and work on, press pause, go ahead and work on these, and then come back when you're ready to check your answers. Okay, we're back to check. On that first set, we've got 17 and 4 hundredths, then 170 and 4 tenths, then 1,704, and then last one on that first set, we have 17,040. That decimal point is moving one place to the right for each increasing power of 10. On our second set, we have 3 and 19 hundredths, and then 31 and 9 tenths, 319, and then 3,190. And on the last set, we have 6,930, just kidding, 6,391, 639 and 1/10, 63 and 91 hundredths, and 6 and 391 thousandths. And that decimal point is moving one place to the left for each decreasing power of 10. Hey, please make sure that you check your understanding and you write something, you share, write something that you learned, or a good tip you want to remember, or a question that you still have. This would be a good place to jot down any shortcuts that you want to remember, any patterns that you saw.